And what he's done for others, he will do for you. With arms wide open, he'll pardon you. About 20 years ago, there was a card going around, cute little card. Now, this was back in BC time. That's before computers and before cable. The card, powerful little card, the card said, somebody asked God one day, how much do you love humanity? How much do you love this creation of yours who keeps getting it wrong? Think about it. They hate each other. They shoot each other. They stay at war with each other. They kill each other. These are the folk you created, God. They rape their women. They enslave entire races. They beat their wives. They abuse their children. These are the folk you created. They think one race is superior to another race. They ignore the poor and walk all over the backs of those who are helpless and voiceless. These are the folk you created, God. Now you tell me which is worse. A president of the world's richest nation in the world who can give a State of the Union address and never mention Katrina and the poor black citizens of the lower Ninth Ward in New Orleans, which he flew over in September of 2005 and which he now looks over in January of 2007. We got the Superdome up. Now let's send 2,100 more lambs to be slaughtered on the altar of greed, stupidity, ignorance, and arrogance in Iraq. Which is worse? Which is worse? A president who don't care nothing about the blacks in New Orleans, or a system that destroys health care and denies it to the poor right here in Chicago? Which is worse? Look at your creation, God. Look at how inhumanly they treat one another, these so-called human beings made in your image. They steal blacks from Africa and then they call the Africans heathens. They steal a continent from Indians and then they put the Indians on reservations and call them savages. They steal oil from Iraq and then they call them terrorists. How much do you love, God, these hard-headed, hard-hearted, player-hating, who don't care nothing about each other, or you don't want to hear a word? You were saying, how much, God, how much do you love these people? And God stretched out his arms, opened up his hand, climbed up on a cross and said this much. This is how much I love them. With arms wide open, he'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do. God is not in the business of condemnation. God is in the business of restoration. Jesus said that, not Jeremiah. Jesus said, for God sent not his son into this world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved, reconciled, restored, put back into a right relationship with God. The church, in other words, the church, your church, is not a museum for the saints. The church is a hospital for sinners. The church is not a fraternity of faultless folk. The church is a fellowship of the forgiven. Everybody in here is forgiven. Somebody said years ago, y'all think y'all so perfect in your church, don't you? I said, no, not perfect, just forgiven. Turn to your neighbor and tell your neighbor, you are forgiven. And even among the forgiven, folks still make mistakes. Even among the forgiven, folks still stumble and fall. That is what the verse to this song we sang earlier says. Someone slipped and fell. Folk, even in the fellowship of the forgiven, stumble and fall. And that is what Paul is talking about in this last chapter in the letter to the church in Galatia. When someone stumbles, when somebody stumbles, look at that text for today. You who are a part of the fellowship of the forgiven should restore that person to the fellowship. Restore them to the community of faith. Not condemnation, but restoration. Restore them not with a judgmental attitude or an air of self-righteousness, but restore them with a spirit of gentleness, checking your own attitude, checking your own actions, and being honest with yourself about your own stuff. Instead of looking down on them because of how they messed up. No. In just this first verse of Galatians 6, there are 3 issues that I could lift up and would want to lift up if I had time. The issue of community. Look at Paul's first words, my friends. That implies community. This is a community of faith. There are relationships in a community, my friends. This is not a bunch of strangers. These are folk who pray for me. They pray for one another, bear one another burdens. See, in our modernity, we love our anonymity. Come on. Pastor Moss always points out to us and talks as he teaches us how things used to be when you were growing up and I was growing up, and you had a front porch. And you sat out on the front porch and everybody speak to everybody 3 or 4 times a day. That was a community. The porch that was on front is now in the back. It's a deck. And you don't speak to nobody because you got a little electronic thing that pushes your garage door up. You drive in and the doors, you don't see nobody in your community. Some of you live in condos. I love the condos. I love to watch them. They get on the condo and they see the people every day. They push the button, they turn around, don't even speak to each other. Just look at the numbers. The numbers ain't changed. It's the same numbers that were there yesterday. But we like to be anonymous. We like our anonymity in our modernity, but in this text there is a personal community, not anonymity. First there's the issue of community, being restored to the community. I'm not going to have time to unpack these 3 issues. I'm just going to lay them on the table for you. You work with them this week. Community, say community. Then there's the issue of compassion, say compassion. Paul says in a spirit of gentleness, be compassionate and remember your own stuff. Take care, Paul says. You ain't perfect. Turn to your neighbor and say, you ain't perfect. Be compassionate. But then when you remember your own stuff, remember also that restoration is the goal, not condemnation. Restoration, that's the 3rd issue. Now, I want to leave you with a story that combines all 3 of these issues and illustrates